here in Nigeria, the procession to mark the second anniversary of protests against police brutality, known as the End SARS movement, ended abruptly in Lagos after security forces fired tear gas. They also deployed water cannon to disperse the gathering. Hundreds had gathered at the toll gate, holding banners, placards and signs while chanting anti-government songs. Others flew Nigerian flags stained with blood, carried mock coffins and sang laments to honor those who died during the protests 2 years ago. The 2020 demonstrations forced the government to disband the special anti-robbery squad of the Nigerian police, which was the catalyst for the protests. A judicial inquiry was set up to investigate the aftermath of the protests, where demonstrators were reported to have been killed by security forces. With more on this, we can speak to Arise's Director of News for Abuja and Political Editor, Samna Sambo, who joins me now. Good to see you, Samna. So the procession ends abruptly, or perhaps we could say predictably, after security forces fired tear gas. How did it come to that?
Yeah, I mean, the security forces had earlier warned that people should not come out to protest. Yes, they are free actually to mark the day, but they don't want a scenario where people's the rights of other road users will be violated and all of that. But of course, for this kind of exercise, I mean, it's pretty difficult for you to be able to stop people from expressing themselves. So when these protesters came out, the police had to quickly ensure that the roads were not blocked and all of that. And eventually, we saw the crowd being dispersed. Well, compared to 2 years ago, Charles, I mean, the crowd was not huge enough, even compared to that of last year when they marked the first anniversary. But I think this is an idea that has come to stay. I mean, if the authorities had thought that NSAS just come and go away like that, I mean, they are mistaken. And so that's why there are calls for the issue of police brutality to be taken very, very serious. As this administration of President Muhammadu Buhari tries to coast home in the next 7 months, the issues of police reform should be taken seriously. And it's also a signpost that the presidential candidates that come in have to take a second look, in fact, a much more deeper look into what police reforms should be like in the next government.
And is there any indication that they are from their manifestos and so on? I mean, for example, we're hearing from Amnesty International that quite a few of the protesters from 2020 are still locked up.
Yes, I mean, it's been pretty difficult for the government to be able to implement some of the things that it has said. I mean, it would. If you look at, for example, the Lagos State panel, judicial panel that was set up, eventually the Lagos State government accepted some of the recommendations and threw away some. Okay, for the recommendations that were accepted by it, how much of it has it been, implemented? It's been pretty difficult. And if you look at the Federal Judicial Panel too that was set up, it's almost the same thing. You know, it's a recurring situation that when judicial panels or other panels are set up in Nigeria, once the issue dies down, I mean, people just get back to their sleep. But is police brutality still with us? Yes, it is still much with us. But is it as much as it used to be? Especially when you had these policemen trying to be very arrogant about their powers. It's not so much the way it used to be. Because, I mean, if you speak about this Inspector General of Police, Usman Baba Alkali, he's actually done very well. I mean, dismissing people who just arrest, policemen who just arrest people randomly, extorting money from them. But a lot of people have also questioned, especially policing experts, saying that, look, you know, it's better we have wholesale reforms instead of just picking a few policemen here and there. What of the numerous policemen that are not being dealt with because nobody's reporting them, especially those ones that happen in the hinterland? So we need wholesale reforms rather than piecemeal, approach to the issues of police reforms in the country.
And now that we've got you here, Sumner, not to throw a wobbler your way, but I mean, we know that 33 out of Nigeria's 36 states have been ravaged by floods. Lots of complaints about help not coming through fast enough and people not being reached. What's the latest on that front?
The latest is that the Minister of Water Resources was actually trying to let people understand that what we're going through is not necessarily because of the release of water from the Lagdo Dam in Cameroon. It has to do with, an increase in rainfall in the country this year, but in a subtle way of trying to make the federal government look as if it's not responsible for some of the things that we are saying. They try to push the fault to some of the states, saying that the states did not do enough to inform their citizens to leave, waterlogged areas, to leave areas where water passes every now and then. But I think the federal government is actually failing in its part to build these dams that are supposed to be holding a lot of water. If there had been predictions by the Nigeria Meteorological Agency that there will be a high rate of rainfall this year, then in other years in the past, what have we been doing? Shouldn't we have been doing the buffer dams that were expected to have done? The Dasen Hausa Dam, for example, which was expected to have been co-built alongside Cameroon to get excess water from the Lagdo Dam whenever it's released. It's yet to be done. Yes, the Kashimbila Dam is there in Taraba, which is being completed at the moment, but nonetheless we need more. We need to also dredge and desilt some of the rivers, like for example River Benue and River Niger. It's time for us to start thinking of desilting some of them, because it's the lack of desilting of these rivers that we've seen, the flood waters, pouring in everywhere, and then also some of the states are not taking these issues of flooding seriously. You have plains where, once, for example, it gets to December now, and the areas that are flooded right now with houses built, all people just do is to come down from those areas again and start building and living within those same water channels. So why don't we have a permanent waterways that, are not affected by flooding or not, whether there's excess rainfall or not? Then, if we have this areas well taken care of,
right,
when we have flooding, it won't be an issue. So the states also have a role to play.
Okay, Sumner, thank you very much indeed. Sumner Sambo is Arise's Director of News for Abuja and also Arise political editor.